Welcome to the Giving Tuesday Campaign Reports webinar. I am glad that you are joining us for this fourth webinar in our Giving Tuesday webinar series. My name is Kelly Ramage, and I have the opportunity of working with you today and highlighting some of the things that you can use to figure out how successful you were in your Giving Tuesday efforts. Now, there's a lot of ways that we could choose to present this information, but we're going to break it down into three messages, or perhaps you want to think about it in terms of three audiences. Its first is going to be those who you want to thank. So those are going to be your donors. We're going to also look at a group or a segment of donors or constituents and those who you might send a message or analyze, we missed you. And then the third category is, here's what we accomplished. Thank you for partnering with us. Now, you might think that approaching it this way is a little unusual, but when we think about reports or outputs, it's sometimes bigger than just a report or different than a report. You want to make sure that you're looking at the different pockets or segments of your donor base so that you can try and build on the momentum or build for improvement in future fundraising efforts or for next year's Giving Tuesday campaigns. So as I said, what we're going to do is we're going to just break it down into these three categories. And within each of these three categories, I'm going to review some of what's available in Donor Perfect, some of what might be available in an online form, and then obviously we're going to look at reports. So the first message that we're going to focus on are those who are your donors, so saying thank you. So simply just in the way or in the form of a review, there's basically three ways that you can say thank you that we have been covering in the last couple of webinars. And that is, saying thank you can be done very quickly with a gift that was given online. An email is sent virtually instantaneously. Another option to say thank you is using the receiving option in Donor Perfect. And then there's a third option that you can use, sending an email with Constant Contact. So it's not the official tax receipt. It's not anything along those lines. It's just simply saying thank you for partnering with us. So what we want to do is, again, just remind you that with the online forms communication, so donor goes to your site or clicks on the link that was sent to them in an email, and they support your Giving Tuesday efforts. Almost instantaneously, they're going to get an email that has a personalized message sent to them. And that is going to be part of using an online form. So that's for online forms as well as crowdfunding forms. Now, all of those transactions that are captured and gathered in online forms are brought down into Donor Perfect, whether that be automatic or manually. Once those transactions are in Donor Perfect, then you could choose to send them a receipt under the receipting mechanism within Donor Perfect. So again, you have the option and opportunity to include a personalized message, and the way that those thank you messages are delivered are either in the form of an email or a letter. Now, we're not going to get into the nitty-gritty of those, just as a reminder that those are two ways that you can communicate with your donors, an important group. But if we were to take that same group of donors, now you have that data in Donor Perfect, maybe you want to start building the relationship, cultivating it so that maybe they'll give again, become a donor that's a repeat donor, or maybe increase their giving. So what we're suggesting is you could send, if you will, a thank you email. And we partner with Constant Contact. That is the email system that integrates with Donor Perfect. But what I'm going to show you is really focusing on how you could set a filter for those who donated. And I'm going to show it in the context of Constant Contact, but also realize that you can do this as just a filter and download the data into Excel so that maybe you're going to upload it into another email system or perhaps do a letter or whatever the case might be. But since we're focusing on the results, the performance, your success in your Giving Tuesday fundraising effort, we're going to talk about filters as well as outputs and ways to analyze your successes. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to hop into a Donor Perfect system, and I'm going to go into a reporting area so that I can show you a report that will show you who are your donors. You just want to start out, who are the donors that have given to Giving Tuesday? Okay, and there's a lot of different ways that you could go about this, but we want to see about who they are, not just the date of the gift and the amount of the gift. So I'm going to go into the report center. So reports, report center. And I'm going to do this from a listing report. And I'm going to select the history list. And I'm going to set a selection filter. So I'm going to make sure that any information that might have previously been there by another report that I was generating or by another colleague is removed so that I have the opportunity of applying and creating a new filter. Because again, when you're analyzing reports and you're looking at these different pockets of constituents, much of what you have to do is going to be driven by your filters. Now, when you think about the data that you are going to be inputting for your Giving Tuesday campaign, a couple of things that you have to kind of think about is, where is that information? So some of you might have chosen to create a solicitation code for Giving Tuesday. Some might be using campaign. Some might be using general ledger, and some of you might be using all of them. But wherever that data is at, to segment or select a specific group of people, that's what we want to build our filter around. So in my system, in this example, I'm going to add a new filter, and I'm going to base my filter criteria on gift information in the solicitation field. So there's one Giving Tuesday 2018 solicitation code that I want to work with. So I'm going to choose exactly equal to, and then I'm going to choose lookup codes. And I'm going to select my Giving Tuesday code and then continue. I don't need to put the dates on that because I want any gift or pledge or transaction, if you will, that came in with that solicitation code. Now, I don't have to save this selection, but if it's something that I would like to use again in the future and I don't want to build it each time, then I could save the filter and then place it into a filter folder. I'm not going to save it, just so you can see that it's still in play, even though I chose not to save it. And then I can run this report, and I'm going to see a list of my donors who have given to the Giving Tuesday 2018 campaign. Okay, that's a report. And if I scoot down here at the bottom of my listings, I'm going to get a count of individual donors. It's not necessarily showing me the sum gifts of all of those gifts. It's just showing me how many people, how many donors did I get from this fundraising effort. Now, if I wanted to, I could then go into mailings and constant contact email and take that same filter, that same segment, because I want to communicate with them in saying thank you. So using the constant contact integration, I would go to list management and I can create a new list. And this is going to be my Giving Tuesday thank you so much list. So again, this is not the official tax thank you. This is just thank you for supporting us. We're excited to tell you. Look for more information coming in the near future. So again, if you recall from the Giving Tuesday webinar that focused on how you can use Constant Contact, you get to go in and you create two different types of lists, one that's dynamic, one that's manual. Dynamic is going to be updated on an ongoing basis every night after it's, if you choose to sync the two programs. I'm choosing to make this particular list a manual list, a once and done. No matter which one you choose, you're going to set a filter because we don't want to send this email to everybody. We want to send it to a subset. So I can set my selection filter, and I can use a save filter if I had it. I can add a new filter, and it's the same exact process. So again, we're focusing on those who have given a gift, and I'm choosing to look at that based on my solicitation in this example. Okay, so I'm setting a filter. It works exactly the same. I can then search for those, and then I could push that over to Constant Contact. So I've shown you a report so you can see who they are in a report form. I've shown you that if you're using the integration with Constant Contact, how you build that same filter. It works the same logic, so that I could send an email through Constant Contact saying thank you. And maybe you don't want to use the integration, but rather you want to download that information of those same people and work with it outside of Donor Perfect. You could do that through going back into the Report Center and Listings and exporting it. Again, I just want to see who they are. I'm not thanking them for their gift, so I don't need gift information. I just simply need main bio information. The filter has carried over, and now I could export it. So there's a lot that you could do with this group of people, but it's a simple filter to select who has given to say thank you, and you can do that in a variety of ways. Now that's one group of people. The next group of people that we're going to choose to kind of review are those who you invited or kind of informed to participate in Giving Tuesday, but for whatever reason, they didn't. So these are the groups of people that we're going to call We Missed You. Now, with the We Missed You, again, this might be an opportunity to use Constant Contact to send them an email. You could certainly create a data file that you download and send them a letter. Whatever the case is, you still want to see who these people are. So you want to kind of reach out to them to maybe engage them one more time to participate in a different fundraising effort. So what we're going to be doing, surprise, surprise, is setting a different filter. So our filter is going to be based on those who were on that initial Giving Tuesday list, but they did not make a donation. So before we get into the nitty-gritty details in Donor Perfect, let me explain the concept here. So if I have a list of people in Donor Perfect that I invited, I informed, they were on that original list. So in my system, it's going to be the fact that they have a contact record that says that they were informed or included in the email campaign of Giving Tuesday 2018. So I'm going to build that filter and that group, and that's going to be the invited list. Okay, that represents, I'm just picking a number, 200 people. Then I have a list of people, different filter, of those who've given. Let's just use and say that that's 100 people. So I have two saved filters, two different groups of people, two different counts. But for this We Missed You group, I want to take the 200, pull out the 100 who've given so that I'm left with those who I want to kind of figure out how I can connect with them. So that is going to be done through what's called a compound filter. So if I scoop back into Donor Perfect, I'm going to do this through pulling a list. So again, to pull a list, you can do that in a variety of places. I'm going to do that in the Report Center under Listings, and I'm just going to choose Export to File. So again, these are people that I just really want to communicate with, and the information that I download about them is going to be driven by my export template. So that might be name and mailing address. That might be name, mailing address, and email. But who I want in this segment is going to be driven by my filter. So I went ahead of schedule here, and I built some save filters. So I have in my filter folder a couple of save filters. So here's one where it says contact mailing code is Giving Tuesday 2018. That is my invited list. That is going to be found on the Contacts tab. Then I have underneath it a Save filter of those who have given based on the solicitation. So what I need to do is take these two saved filters, so you have to build them and save them, and then I'm going to join them into a compound filter. So I'm going to choose Add New Compound Filter, and now I'm going to look for those two saved filters. So here I see my invited list. My contact mailing code is Giving Tuesday 2018, and this is for those who we've missed. So it's going to be in the second drop down, this option called minus any rows. So who do I want to exclude? I want to exclude those who've already given. So I'm going to look for my donors who have given to my Giving Tuesday 2018 based on the solicitation. So again, in my data set, that filter is going to work. What you would have to know is did you identify those who were invited, probably from the Contacts tab, and then when gifts come in, how are they being identified? It might be solicitation, it might be general ledger, it might be campaign. So now I have my compound filter. So this is the We Missed You Giving Tuesday 18 list. But it's a compound filter. And again, a compound filter is simply two saved filters joined together for one final list. And now I can export that information if I would like. I can take that same filtering logic and apply it to Constant Contact and creating a mailing list, an e-list there. I could take that same compound filter and apply it to a different report to see who they are. And I could do that through listings, for example, and perhaps look at it based on the summary list, or just who they are might be better served by choosing the linear list with addresses. Now you're thinking, now isn't this supposed to be a webinar that talks about how we did? Absolutely, and that's what we're going over next. But we want to make sure that you know how to select those other groups of people, because knowing how you performed is important, but you also need to know the different categories of who you're interacting with. Okay, so now let's jump in and talk about here's what we accomplished, so that you can communicate and partner with your stakeholders, including your donors, in terms of your performance. So what are we going to talk about in this area of here's what we accomplished? Well, what we're going to be talking about are some reports. And we're going to be looking at 4 reports. There are plenty of other reports that you could have chosen or choose to use. I'm highlighting 4. The first one is called the statistical tabulation. The second one is the gift month comparison chart. The third one is the GL code analysis, and the fourth one is the comprehensive donor revenue analysis. All 4 are reports. Now, what I just want to kind of emphasize when I go in and demonstrate this is I'm giving you examples of filters to apply, but again, you'll have to know where that data has been entered to isolate Giving Tuesday. All right, so the first one is a financial report. So if I scoot back into Donor Perfect, I'm going to go to Reports, Report Center, and I'm going to select Financial Reports. Depending on how you have your report list kind of set up, it might be based on last run date, it might be alphabetical. So if you just start typing for statistical tabulation, you'll be able to find it. What I like about the statistical tabulation is that it is, I believe, an easy to understand type report. So what you have to think about when you're generating these types of reports is, do you want to look at how Giving Tuesday did in the picture of all fundraising efforts, or do you want to look at just Giving Tuesday? In some reports, like the statistical tabulation and some of the others, you can kind of pick and choose what you're analyzing. So I'm going to choose my date range to be the entire year so far in 2018. And I'm going to segment, which is another way of thinking about segment, is going to be subtotals. And I'm going to segment this report by solicitation. But you could segment by general ledger or by campaign, wherever your data for Giving Tuesday has been entered. I'm not going to set a filter because I want to see how Giving Tuesday 2018 is performing or has performed in relation to everything else. I'm right now going to be running this, if you will, based on cash, a gift report. So that would be outright gifts, and that would also be pledge payments. If I check include pledges, then I would get outright gifts as well as any new pledges that fall in this time period. So I'm going to not check include pledges, and I did not set a filter, but because of the way this report is set up here, I can see how Giving Tuesday 2018 is doing compared to other fundraising efforts. I can then drill down on the blue total and see the individual donors. Now, if I want to take this same report, but I want to isolate Giving Tuesday, well, then what I have to do is back here at the setup, I would need to set a filter. So this segment by is kind of a nice thing because I can see a lot of performance of the whole year, and I can zoom in on Giving Tuesday. But if I really just want to see Giving Tuesday and nothing else, then I would set my selection filter. And if I had a save filter, which you now know that I do, I can select that and go. So it's going to be the same layout, but just simpler because I'm just looking at Giving Tuesday. All right, so again, that was a financial report called the statistical tabulation. Now, if you've been doing Giving Tuesday fundraising efforts for a couple of years, you might want to see how you're doing in comparison to each other. So I'm going to go into the Report Center. And the report that I'm going to suggest is in the Other Reports folder. And specifically, I'm going to choose the Gift Month Comparison Chart. And in this one, I'm going to go back to 2016 through 2018. Now, I, again, don't want to see this in comparison to everything. I want to look at how Giving Tuesday is doing. So since my solicitation codes have the years built into them, I'm actually going to set a filter based on campaign. So it's just my Giving Tuesday campaign. Or maybe in your data set, it might be better to use a filter based on general ledger. So I'm going to apply a filter. I'm going to add a new filter. And I'm going to choose campaign is equal to Giving Tuesday. So you can see how my data has been set up that my campaign codes don't have the years built into them. But my report parameter, looking at it here, is going to isolate all of the gifts that fall in 2016 through 2018 that have that campaign of Giving Tuesday. And so now I can see that something really amazing happened in 2017 for Giving Tuesday. 2018 is a little weak. 2016, it wasn't so bad, but I'm able to see at a glance how I'm performing for Giving Tuesday in chart form for 3 years. And again, what I chose to do was specify my date range up here of the years. Then I applied a filter. Some of you might not like setting filters, so you could also get the same result by using the sidebar. So I have my campaign field visible in my sidebar. So I'm going to click on the magnifying glass, binoculars, and I'm going to choose Giving Tuesday, and I'll end up with the same report. Now you might be thinking, I don't see campaign in the sidebar. What do I do? So if you scroll up just a bit, you can click on Manage Fields. And when you choose Manage Fields, you'll select Gift Pledge, and from there you can look for Campaign and click on the blue arrow to push it over as a selected field. Once it's in the selected field list, then you'll be able to apply, if you will, a narrowing down selection process in this way. All right. So that's the gift month comparison chart. And again, this was in Reports, Report Center, but this time it was in a report found in the Other Report folder. Now, this third report is going to be analyzing based on General Ledger. So for those of you who have your Giving Tuesday identified as a General Ledger bucket, then this report might be a good one for you. So I'm in Reports, Report Center, Financial Reports, and it's called the GL Code Analysis. So with the GL Code Analysis in the sidebar, I'm going to specify my time period. So I'll go ahead and use the same 3-year time period. And I'm going to choose to just look at Giving Tuesday. Okay, and I'm going to run the report. And so here I can see for the 3 years, here's my total for Giving Tuesday. If I wanted to, I could convert this to a chart in a very similar way to the one that we were looking at previously by clicking on View Chart. Okay. So the GL Code Analysis, you can set a date range. You can apply filters either by applying a filter or using the sidebar. I can look at it in number form, which is running the report, so I'm getting the total picture of just Giving Tuesday, or I can convert that to a chart. Now, in a similar way, if I remove these values here, I could see how Giving Tuesday as a general ledger is performing overall. So if you're trying to see how general ledger, the Giving Tuesday general ledger campaign or fundraising effort is doing overall, you could do that for 1 year or multiple years. But you can see how this is segmenting by GL code. So it's similar to the statistical tabulation. It's similar to the gift month comparison chart. The biggest difference here is that it's kind of designed to just look at it based on GL data, GL codes. Now, the fourth report that I'm going to show you is another financial report, and it is called the Comprehensive Donor Revenue Analysis. Now, I'm going to imagine that I want to see at the end of my year my fundraising efforts. So I'm going to come in here, and I really do just want to focus on Giving Tuesday. How did Giving Tuesday perform? So I'm going to set my filter based on my campaign for Giving Tuesday. And I'm checking to see if it's there. If it's not there, I can always add a new filter. And I'm going to base it on my campaign field because that will work with my data set. So kind of the notes that you want to take here are you want to select the data that is going to give you your Giving Tuesday transactions. And in this report, it's designed to compare 3 years. So you might want to select, if you're doing this for solicitation, it might be solicitation, multiple equals, Giving Tuesday 16, Giving Tuesday 17, Giving Tuesday 18. Now, why am I suggesting that? Or you might use campaign like I am, because this is breaking it down into 3 years. So here I can see some really great kind of zoomed in data of Giving Tuesday. So it's going to look more at the donor trends. So I have active donors, I have retained donors, I have new donors, and reactivated. With each of these, if I hover kind of over the label or the descriptor, a tip is going to pop up and it's going to tell me how it's deriving that calculation. So keeping in mind, this is a training system, so it's very small, but this is telling me that I have 11 active donors. They gave a gift to Giving Tuesday because that was my filter that I applied. In the previous year, I had 8, and in the year before that, I had 7. Retained is those who gave this year as well as last year. So the same 5 here gave in 18, gave in 17. In 17, there were 5 retained donors, and in 16. So they gave 2 previous years, like this year, the current, and 1 year prior. New means that they gave their very first Giving Tuesday gift, and then reactivated means, I'll just hover over that, is donors who gave 2 or more years ago, did not give last year, then gave this year. So there was a gap in time. Okay, so this person gave in 18, they did not give last year, so they didn't give in 17, but they did give prior to that. And with each of these, you can click on the blue link and drill down and see the individuals. Now, the one thing that I should mention with this report is that this is based on monies received, so this does not include pledges. And again, I'm showing you 4 reports with some selection filters that you can apply to see how Giving Tuesday performed. In reality, there are other ways that you might want to analyze your performance of Giving Tuesday. It might be with, how did your online form perform? How did your email work? What was the click-through rate? And those are all good metrics that you may not necessarily tell your donors, but you might tell your executive director, or you might report back to the marketing director, or you might report to your board. So if those are types of information you're interested in knowing, well, those types of simple statistics are really at your fingertips. So what you see here is a snapshot of the online Review and Acceptance Center, and you can see by sliding the statistics slider or toggle over, you'll get some simple statistics. So here's the total number of views, total number of donations, and then your views and the completed rate or the converted rate. So there I can see that this form had, for Giving Tuesday, had 100% conversion. Now, that would be awesome if that were true in an ideal world, but you can kind of see just looking at the one above it. There were 7 views. I got 3 donations because 3 completed the whole process. So that form had a 43% conversion. So where that's found, scooting back into Donor Perfect, is if I go to App Links and I go to Online Forms, it's going to take me to the Review and Acceptance Center, sometimes referred to as the RAC. And here I can see, here are the donation pieces. Okay, so here's how many transactions or gifts were given and the total dollar. If I slide it over to statistics, I see the total number of donations, but now I'm seeing the views, number of views, the number of completed, so I can see my converted rate. In a similar way, if you're using Constant Contact, if you go into Constant Contact and you go to Reporting, so you go to Reporting, what you'll be able to see is the percentage. You can click on the percentage for the click rate for that email campaign. Again, this is just showing you ways that you can take the data that you have in Donor Perfect to determine your success so that you can share it with everybody. You can say thank you to your donors, not just thank you for your gift, but thank you for your support. There's ways that you can select those constituents, those donors, and you can communicate with them. Another group of people that are going to always be part of a fundraising effort like Giving Tuesday are those who you were hoping would participate, but they didn't. So those are the "we missed you." Here are ways you can still support our mission. And when you are pulling out that type of a group, many times you might have the need of building a compound filter. Those who were invited to Giving Tuesday minus those who've already donated are leaving the remaining ones that you want to try and reach out with a different message. You also want to kind of see how does that number compare to the number of donors you have. And then lastly, here's what we accomplished. We couldn't have done this without you. You can communicate with them, you can generate reports on this, and you have bragging rights. You've worked really hard to have a successful fundraising effort of Giving Tuesday. We want to celebrate that with you, and we want you to know how you can communicate that really well to everybody who needs to know that. So we know that you are very busy, and we want to thank you. I want to thank you for participating in these webinars over the last couple of weeks as you're gearing up for Giving Tuesday. I truly hope that your Giving Tuesday fundraising efforts are amazingly successful. As you're thinking about this, like, wow, this is great information, or I'm not quite sure what my next step is, I would encourage you, if you haven't done so already, to go into Donor Perfect Community. So again, if you go up here to our question mark bubble in Donor Perfect and click on Community, then when you're in Community, if you go to Discuss, you can choose Talk with Community Members, and there's a lot of great groups. But the one that I want to just point out is that we have a Giving Tuesday group. And these are people who are staff who are here to answer questions, but more importantly, it's people who are using our tools, the same tools you are, asking questions and trying to find answers together. So if you have questions or concerns, this is a great place to go. If you have questions or concerns more on the technical side, you can always reach out to support. But again, thank you so much, and I wish you all the best in your Giving Tuesday fundraising efforts.